Welcome to another deep dive. Ever looked up at the clouds and felt kind of like you were missing a secret code? Like, they can seem totally random, but what if there's actually a way to know what those fluffy, wispy, sometimes seriously dramatic formations are trying to tell us? Well, that's what we're diving into today. And get this, our guide is this awesome cloud chart. It's got all these pictures and descriptions. It's like, I don't know, a cheat sheet for the sky.
It really is like a key,
Yeah, but
to this whole other level of understanding about the weather. Those formations you see up there, they're not random at all. They're visual clues to what's going on in the atmosphere, the invisible forces at play.
okay, I am so ready to decode. So let's start with like the low-hanging clouds. We've all seen those, right?
Yeah.
Cumulus clouds, the classic puffy cotton ball ones.
Right, your fair weather clouds, usually. But, and the cloud chart points this out, if they start growing vertically, like getting taller and taller, that can indicate what we call atmospheric instability.
Whoa, okay, hold on. See, that's what I'm talking about. Atmospheric instability. It sounds kind of ominous, but also like I should probably understand it. Break it down for me. What does that even mean?
So imagine this. Instability in the atmosphere basically means the air is primed for movement, ready for things to rise and churn, kind of like a pot of water that's about to boil over. So those puffy cumulus clouds, if they get tall, it's a sign the atmosphere is energized. Could mean more dramatic weather changes are on the way.
So it's like those cumulus clouds are giving us a little heads up, like, hey, things might get a little wild up here. Okay, that's kind of cool. But now for the opposite, what about stratus clouds? You know, those flat gray blanket ones that seem to show up on dreary days? Yeah, not my favorite, to be honest.
Yeah, I get that. They definitely live up to their name, don't they? Stratus clouds often mean the air is stable, meaning there's not a lot of vertical movement happening up there, hence why they bring drizzle, light rain. Things are kind of calm, stagnant up above.
Okay, makes sense. All right, but now let's talk about the real showstoppers. The clouds that make you stop and go, whoa! I'm talking about cumulonimbus clouds, the ones that just scream thunderstorm. The cloud chart, it even calls out their fibrous tops and anvils, which sound kind of intimidating if I'm being honest.
Oh yeah, they're definitely the powerhouses, no doubt. See, as these cumulonimbus clouds grow, and they're fueled by all this rising warm air, they get so tall they can actually bump up against the tropopause.
The what a
The
pause.
tropopause, think of it like a lid on the lowest layer of our atmosphere. We call that the troposphere. So once all that rising air hits the tropopause, it's got to go somewhere, right? It spreads out, which is how you get that flat, anvil-shaped top on a cumulonimbus.
Whoa, so it's literally like the clouds hitting a ceiling.
Hmm.
Okay, I have to ask about something I saw on this chart that's got me a bit worried. It says L8, cumulus and stratocumulus, not spreading, bases at different levels. That sounds like a recipe for some seriously wild weather, am I right?
You're right to be cautious about that one. Seeing those together, especially when they're not spreading out, tells us there's a lot going on at different levels of the atmosphere. Usually means multiple layers of unstable air, each with its own thing going on, which can fuel some pretty intense weather systems, to be honest.
So if we see those non-spreading clouds just kind of hanging out at different levels, bad weather is almost like guaranteed.
It's a pretty strong indicator. Now, you might be wondering what kind of bad weather we're talking about here. Well, think about it, right? We've got unstable air, so conditions are already primed for storms to develop. But because we've got these cumulus and stratocumulus clouds hanging out at different altitudes, the storms themselves can be pretty widespread and, honestly, kind of unpredictable.
Okay, yeah, that does not sound good. It's like the atmosphere is throwing a party and everyone's invited, including some uninvited guests like hail and strong winds, maybe.
Haha, that's a great way to put it. So let's shift gears a bit. Let's talk about those mid-level clouds, the ones that kind of get overlooked sometimes.
Yeah, I'll be honest, I've always struggled to like even identify those. They're kind of mysterious, just floating around in that in-between space.
And yet they hold valuable clues, too. Take altostratus clouds, for instance. You'll find them on the cloud chart, described as these grayish or bluish sheets almost covering the whole sky,
Mm.
like a veil, sometimes so thin you can almost see the sun through them.
Okay, yeah, I've definitely seen those before. They are kind of eerie, actually, like somebody dimmed the lights on the sun.
Exactly. And often they're a sign that a warm front is approaching.
Yeah.
You know how, like, right before a big rainstorm, the air feels heavy, humid.
Hmm.
That's often a warm front moving in.
Right.
And those altostratus clouds, they're like the harbingers.
So next time I see those, I'll know to grab my umbrella. And maybe a raincoat, just in case.
Exactly. Now, on the other end of the spectrum, in that mid-level family, we have altocumulus clouds. These are the ones with those, like, mesmerizing, rippled patterns, almost like fish scales across the sky.
Oh, yes. Those are so cool looking. The chart even mentions a specific type called lenticular altocumulus that forms near mountains. I bet those are stunning in person.
They really are. Imagine like a smooth, lens-shaped cloud just hovering perfectly still near a mountain peak. It's a sight to behold for sure. They form when you have strong winds being forced upward by the mountains, creating these wave-like patterns in the air.
Wow, so it's like the mountains are actually sculpting the clouds. And speaking of connections, remember how we were talking about cumulus and cumulonimbus clouds and their potential for, some rough weather?
Right.
Well, check this out. M6 altocumulus from the spreading of cumulus or cumulonimbus. It's like those mid-level clouds are giving us a little hint about what's going on down below.
Precisely. It all ties together. Those mid-level altocumulus clouds might be a remnant of a storm that's already passed, or they could be a sign that conditions are still ripe for more storms to develop.
Okay, I'm really starting to see how everything's connected up there in the atmosphere. It's like, I don't know, learning a new language, the language of the clouds.
That's a great way to think about it. Each cloud type, it's like a word or a phrase. And when you put them all together, you can start to understand the bigger story the atmosphere is trying to tell us.
Okay, so we've tackled the low-level clouds. We've explored those mysterious mid-level formations. I'm ready to ascend even higher. Take us up to the high clouds, the ones that seem to, brush against the edge of space. All right, taking it up to high altitude. Now, these clouds are always so impressive to me. Those wispy formations way up high. What's the story with those?
Well, you're right, they are impressive. And the fact that they form so high up, that's actually a big clue about what they're made of,
Hmm.
which is mostly ice crystals.
Ice crystals, wow. So we're talking some seriously cold temperatures up there.
Oh, definitely. We're talking altitudes above 20,000 feet.
Hmm.
And when you think about it, it's fascinating how they form. It's all about moisture getting lifted to those frigid heights where it freezes into those delicate ice crystals.
Okay, so picture perfect beauty for sure. But I have a feeling there's more to the story. What kind of weather clues can these high altitude clouds give us?
Great question. Let's take cirrus clouds, for example. Those are the ones that look like, those delicate white feathers or those wispy strands. And the cloud chart points out if you see those cirrus clouds increasing, becoming denser over time, that can actually be a sign of an approaching weather front.
So those wispy cirrus clouds could be like a little heads up that a change is coming.
Exactly. They're like the atmosphere's early warning system.
Yeah.
And you know what's really cool? The chart also mentions that some cirrus clouds are actually, get this, the remnants of those massive cumulonimbus thunderclouds that we were talking about earlier.
Wait, really? You're telling me those delicate wispy clouds were once part of like a powerful storm?
It's true. As a thunderstorm dissipates, that anvil-shaped top we discussed, it can actually detach and drift away, leaving behind those wispy cirrus clouds.
Wow, that is seriously cool. It's like a little reminder that even the most, powerful storms eventually fade away.
Exactly. And, while the cloud chart has been a super helpful guide today, it is important to remember that there are even more dramatic and unusual cloud formations out there.
Oh, I am all ears. Tell me more.
Well, have you ever heard of a shelf cloud?
Can't say that I have.
Okay, so picture this. A long, low, wedge-shaped cloud. It almost looks like, a giant shelf extending out from a thunderstorm. They're pretty rare, but when you see one, you know a powerful storm is on the way.
Okay, that is definitely one I would want to be prepared for. Any others I should know about?
Well, there's also the wall cloud. That's a localized area of rotating clouds that descends from the base of a thunderstorm.
Hold on, rotating clouds? That sounds a little unnerving.
It can be.
Yeah.
A wall cloud is a potential precursor to tornadoes. Really highlights why it's so important to recognize these visual cues.
Wow, so we've gone from fluffy cotton balls to potential tornadoes. This has been quite the journey.
It really has. But that's the beauty of the sky, isn't it? It's constantly changing, full of surprises, always reminding us of the power of nature.
Absolutely. Before we started this deep dive, I looked at clouds like I guess most people do.
Right.
Pretty, maybe a little mysterious, but now I feel like I have a whole new understanding of what's happening up there.
I think that's the key takeaway here. It's not just about identifying different cloud types. It's about understanding that the sky is telling a story. And with a little knowledge, you can start to read that story and gain a deeper appreciation for the forces that shape our weather, our climate, ultimately our world.
Beautifully put. So, to our listeners, next time you look up at those clouds, remember there's so much more than just random shapes in the sky. They're clues, they're messengers, and they're a powerful reminder of the beauty and complexity of our planet. And hey, if you manage to predict a sudden downpour thanks to your newfound cloud knowledge, we want to hear about it. Until next time, happy cloud spotting.